Okay, so welcome everybody to today's Journal of Medical Microbiology seminar series. Thank you for joining us. Just a few housekeeping things. The live transcript is available if required. If you prefer to hide it, just click on the live transcript button and select hide subtitles. The session will be recorded and the link will be sent to you afterwards and it will be available to view for 7 days. Please use the question and answer function if you have any questions you'd like to ask Professor Mathee to answer at the Q&A session at the end. Feel free to use the chat to introduce yourselves and for general comments. And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce our speaker, who is Professor Kalai Mathee. So Kalai's biography is on the website, so but she's asked me just to mention a few things about her journey here as an inspiration, perhaps. So Kalai comes from Malaysia. Her mother tongue is Tamil, and she's the first person in her extended family to go to college and become a professor in the United States. She believes education is the key out of all oppression and has worked as housemaid, babysitter, cook to put herself through graduate studies. Since then, she's spent time in Denmark, Harvard Medical School, and the WHO. She serves on the international board for several universities in Malaysia and India. And Kalai has continuously been breaking barriers to become the first in many of the areas. So she's the first Tamil educated female professor from Malaysia who established active research environment and trained over 150 mentees. And she has over 135 publications and has delivered over 150 talks. She's the first founding faculty of the Herbert Wertheim College of Medicine, the first Florida International Professor and first Malaysian female to be elected as Fellow of the American Academy of Microbiology. She's the first non-UK editor-in-chief we've had at the Journal of Medical Microbiology in its history, and she's the first Malaysian to receive a recent Microbiology Society Outreach Prize for 2022. So with Kalai, we're just coming to the end of our 5-year reign as editor-in-chief for the Journal of Medical Microbiology, and we're passing that reign on. But Kalai is very much still involved in the editorial board actively and is a Latin American editor and profiles editor. So it's a great pleasure to introduce you, Kalai, and the floor is yours. Thanks.
Thank you, Norman, for the introduction. I really appreciate. Good day to all the audience who are here. We're happy that you joined us. Very quickly, I represent the Microbiology Society. We have 6 journals, and most of publication in most of these journals are free. We certainly want you to consider Journal of Medical Microbiology, obviously because it's our journal. And there are several areas that listed over in the slide. So when you review the recording, you can see that again. And I wanted to note it's free to publish in our journal. And I hope you'll take advantage of the society offerings. A disclaimer, what I know is little, but we can obviously learn together. And I love to quote this Tamil proverb by one of the female poet called Katrathu Kaiman Alavu Kalladadu Ulagalavu. So perhaps, there are things that I might be able to learn from you. So if there are any specific points or comments you want to make, I would really appreciate it. In a chat function, you can certainly introduce yourself and also think about for a second, what do you really want to get out of this lecture? And note that down and then come back to it later and see if this session really meet your needs, or did I miss some specific comments that would also open the door for questions. Thank you so much again for being here. So the outline of my talk is very briefly, I'll go over the common mistakes. And then the major part of my talk will focus on the um, audience is a small part, but the effective slides and the components of presentation. And then we'll talk about you as a presenter as well as you as an audience, and a little bits of odds and ends that falls outside this main theme, but certainly a very important part of giving an effective presentation. so so if you look at this slide and somebody puts up this slide and you wonder what is wrong with the slide, some of you say no, nothing is wrong, but there is certainly the visual appreciation for any presentation is very, it's sometimes it's subliminal, but people do take notice the quality of your slides. And you can see right away is that this slide has this ghost space. You're given this entire slide to work with, and then you choose to just work in the corner. And I often say that it also reflects who you are. If you're an introvert, you'll go to one corner, and if an extrovert, you're likely to use the entire slides. So you also give very nonverbal cues to the listener, or if you're interviewing, to your interviewer. So let's look at what are the common mistakes the speakers make. So most often, like, they don't disclose why should the audience care, and what is the goal of the presentation. And then often, you have too few slides, so you finish too early, or too many slides that you go over your time. And of course, the worst thing is the terrible slides. Excuse me. And when the slides are terrible, again, you lose your audience, and you have to keep the audience engaged. And we also always fail to summarize or conclude our presentation, and suddenly there is a very abrupt ending. We don't even know when is this ending, and then there's an abrupt ending, it's over, right? And much of it also shows that there's lack of preparation on the part of the presenter. So let's talk about the audience, right? And for me, for any speaker, audience is everything, because you are not here to speak to yourself, but you're speaking to a community. So you must understand who they are. Now, what is their level of scientific level? You don't go to a science conference on microbiology and tell what is a bacteria, right? You'll assume that everybody who walked in there know what a bacteria is. So you have to tailor your talk to the level of your audience. If you go to high school students or elementary school students or primary education, you have to start from very basic. So that is the scientific level of the audience that you have to worry about. And the other one is the cultural aspect of audience. And as a scientist, many of us travel all over the world, and I've been to over 30 countries giving lectures. And you got to understand the cultural nuances of that country, what you should and should not do. And one of the things I always say is that hand gestures. Many of the hand gestures are considered really, really bad, and there's 3 of them in the image here. And all these 3 hand gestures are okay in certain countries, but not so okay in many other countries. So some of them literally means that vulgar. They have a vulgar meanings. So you should look up. If you're going to a particular country, you should look up do's and don'ts, and how you dress, what you should not be wearing in certain countries, etc. So why do we care? Because we want to gain the goodwill and respect of the audience, so that they will actually pay attention to you. Learn how to say good morning or good afternoon in that language, and they know at least you're trying. And I mean, you sort of get their attention. At the same time, you start engaging the audience, and you must disclose what is it in for them. Why are you giving this talk? So you need to seriously sit down and think about how are you going to open the lecture, right? A bang up opening. So you can pose a question, And or you quote, start with the quotation of an admired figure. Let's say if you're talking about poverty, you can quote Desmond Tutu, or if you're talking about apartheid, you can quote Nelson Mandela. Or, if you think of appropriate quote for your presentation, right? You can also recount a personal experience that certainly works, right? And the whole idea is to give them the context. Why should we care about it, right? So then that again, you're creating a rapport with the audience. Suddenly people will connect with this, your presentation and you. And a very good example I often give is antimicrobial resistance. There are 100 of you in the participants right now. And many of you think, why should I care for antimicrobial resistance? And maybe not. But there are few, and I'm always, whenever I give this talk in person, find that there are few who would tell me, no, I don't care about AMR. And then I tell them, hey, look, if you have if do you know that the global deaths and due to antimicrobial resistance for 2019 is 1.27 million. And then I say, okay, if in the US there's about 35,000 deaths, of course, these numbers pale against COVID, but this is what was happening annually before COVID, right? And compared to the number of deaths for Ebola in 2014 is 11,300. So you can see there's 3 times more deaths, but no one is talking about. And then even if you don't know the context of what does 35,000 deaths mean, right? You don't have a. So if you think of an airplane, Airbus 380, if you load them fully, it can hold 853 individuals. So there are 41 Airbus crashes every year that contributed by antimicrobial resistance. Shouldn't you care about it? What is important is in it has been predicted that in 2050, the leading cause of death will be antimicrobial resistance. I won't be alive in 2050, but many of you will be. And you will become the statistics if you don't really care about antimicrobial resistance. Now think about those of you who didn't know or didn't care. Should you not care about antimicrobial resistance? Now I have gained a few more of the audience members into the conversation of antimicrobial resistance. So this is what I mean by giving a context, a big picture. Why should they care about a particular topic? And then the other thing is, as a speaker, you must connect with audience, which is very hard in these Zoom presentations. But however, if you're in person, you must try to make eye contact with every person in the room. And what we do is we triangulate. What do you mean by triangulation? So you go to one corner of the room and talk to that group, walk back, don't turn your back, walk back, and then go to the other corner of the room and you're talking to people, scan the room and make sure you don't stare and a one-to-one person, and then you come back and you go in the middle. So you're triangulating all the time, but in a very slow pace. Okay, it's almost people don't even realize you're triangulating, right? And this has to be deliberate small moves. And also you have to realize that any talk can be fashioned like telling a story. And I always say, how would you tell your story to your grandmother? Think about it and tell a story, no matter how boring, how uninteresting the topic might be, but you can make it interesting if you prepare ahead, right? And smile and relax and have fun, right? And the whole idea is to have fun. So we move on to the third thing is effective slides. Here's a wonderful image. And when I ask my students these days, I ask them, have you seen these? 99% of them never seen these little squares. And I'm sure 50% of this group probably have seen this. These are slides. These are how we used to make slides, which means we have to prepare 2 weeks in advance to get the slides done. Not like PowerPoint, you can get it done an hour before your presentation. Okay, So the slides, don't provide scripts, don't cut and paste and highlight. This is a no-no. You also need to avoid unreadable diagrams. You do not want to use diagrams. If you really want them to know, you give them a diagram printout, right? If it's in person, or send them a link. Because very often, especially in biology seminars, they'll put these sequences that nobody can read. And they even will say, oh, I know you can't read it. Then why the hell are you showing me things I can't read or comprehend on a slide, and wasting all the time, wasting the time. So let's talk about some small things that really makes a difference towards the end. If you look at these three options, which one of the options works best? Obviously, number one, right? Because it's large, it's very visible. So you do not use smaller fonts. You want to make sure to keep to fonts that are more than 24. Occasionally can do 20. But if you're going to do a presentation in a large room, you want the person right at the back to read your text or read whatever you put it on your slide, and make sure the size of the font is larger than 24. So how about style? If you look at all these three styles, the first one is a sentence structure, second one is capitalized, and third one is not bold, and it's very tight. Of the three, obviously, number one is easy to read. A lot of people like to use capital letters, but I'll tell you that all studies shows that writing everything in cap makes reading very hard. And in your presentation, reading is very quick, right? You're moving with your slides very quickly. So you don't do those two. You want to use bold sentence format, right? You can capitalize first letters or not is your choice, but don't use all capital or small non-bolded sentences. Okay. Font. Choice of font is very, very important, right? If you look at these three lines, second line is cursive, third line is weird, and there are fonts where the line, the thickness of the line of each letter is equal. And if you look at the first one, Ruth Ginsburg fought for gender equality, you can see the thickness of the line is equal for every letter. Times New Roman, and many others are really terrible choice of a font. So I would recommend either you use Arial, which is Geneva. Those two are really ancient font. And these days, of course, I like Century Gothic, Avenir, and Avenir Next. Right. So, and in fact, the title of my slides is made with Arial rounded, right? And they are thick, and it's very obvious. If you walk into my lecture, you know what my title is or what I'm going to talk about during the lecture. And then the choice of colors, right? Color matters, and you can see it's really, really hard to read all these lines. And you can see the first one is obviously is much more contrast, and it's very obvious, and you really need to think about not just the contrast, but what contrast. Even though the blue on yellow looks quite good, but there are people have blue yellow colorblind. And of course, red and green colorblind is more common. So you want to think about the colors you choose that will also be allow people with colorblind to follow you. And here's a slide. And if you look at this slide, it has the information, but there are so many things wrong about this slide. And I can just mark you, right? And you can see there are space, there is bullets are not in the same format, and the figure is trashed, there is no page number. There are many things wrong in this slide. And if I take this slide and then fix it, right? And also there's no image source. Remember, you always have to provide the source where you got the images from. And the same slide, now I have put the bullets the same and did not stretch the figure. and provided the link to the figure. And so it's really important that you organize each slide and make sure you align everything, whether it's a vertical align, horizontal align, or distribution align. Learn how to use that function in PowerPoint. I always say that you think you know how to use PowerPoint, go take a course and realize that there are so many more things you don't know about how to use your PowerPoint. I highly recommend that. So let's talk about slide title. Every slide must have a slide title. And it's not only important for somebody who walks in to know what you're talking about, so it has to be short and descriptive, but it's also important if somebody is reading your slide for a blind person, that they go on to the next slide, they will have to know what is the content is all about. So that has now become very important, that the slides are accessible to the blind, and you have to have a slide title for every slide. I insist, or I hope you remember this, make it a single line. A short, if you can't make it, think about it. How can I shrink this long line into 3 words to tell what you're going to talk about? It takes little effort, you can do it. And make the size large. So I recommend font size of 36 to 40. Occasionally you can go slower, lower, but don't go below 32. So it's large, it stands out and on the slide. And once you decide a particular style, you make sure it's consistent. If you decide the title to be going to be left, every slide should be left. If you decide it's in the center, every slide it should be in the center, and always align it. So how do you prevent errors? Learn how to use Slide Master in PowerPoint. The first thing you do before you start a PowerPoint presentation, open the Slide Master, set your font, title font, set your bullets, set your size of the text, and set your page number, everything in the Slide Master. Once you close the Slide Master, every new slide will force you to use the same template, then you'll never make mistakes. Again, if you don't know how to use Slide Master, take a course on PowerPoint. So that is for the slide title, right? So let's talk about the content of the slide. That is what is you're reading right now. This is all in purple, right? That's the content of the slide. Again, you want to go for minimum words. And what is the role of a slide? I think you really need to think about why do you have a slide? And so I will probably go around the room and ask, but let me tell you something. The slides are simply to help you, the presenter. They are what I call the prompters. It prompts you to talk about the content, right? So you don't write full sentences, okay? Because you have to have minimum words just to remind you, I need to talk about this aspect of this title. If you write full sentences, you will start reading them. And then what's the point of attending your talk? I might as well read your titles, read your slide and walk away. And you also want to keep the number of points per slide to 3 to 7 points with some images, right? And again, consistent style, different from the title, and make sure each point is in bullet. I would say the bullet should be different color, different font. Look, I made my own bullet with the Microbiology Society logo. So you can make your own bullet anytime, right, in the PowerPoint. And then the second level bullet is different. Again, all these bullets are set in my Slide Master. Go for figures and tables rather than just words. And certainly pictures work because all these pictures are 1,000 words. What is another added benefit of having very clear bullet points? You do not have to use a laser. Have you seen me using a laser? No, you know exactly where am I when I'm giving a talk because my points are very simple, straightforward to follow. So you only need the laser if you need to describe something and you need to get them to pay attention to a particular point. So, and many of us, get very nervous, and then our lasers will start rotating all over the room and on their faces. So I like to lose my laser most of the time, but I keep it if I need it. So here's an example of a title slide, a slide with content. And so so the title is cystic fibrosis, very straightforward. And it tells me I must talk about it's being a genetic disorder. It's a recessive genetic disorder. It's very common. And I can even add more things about what is the world statistics. But if I am in the US, I customize it for my US audience. And what causes cystic fibrosis, and what is eventually these patients, lung function deteriorates, and that leads to infections. They're extremely susceptible to respiratory infections, and particularly Staph aureus, Pseudomonas aeruginosa, etc. So here I will expand on these points, but these are the points that I must cover if I'm going to talk about cystic fibrosis. So make sure you have a concise content matters. You have to have concise content for each slide. And don't overcrowd and clutter the slide. And this is something especially the eukaryotic scientists love to do. And then they won't even tell you which graph they are talking about. I'm straining my eyes to figure out which graph, what is the points, what are those colors. Instead, what you do, you take each figure, put it in a new slide, make it larger. If necessary, retype over the slide. And then you can actually now walk your audience through the slide and pay attention to what you want them to know, or pick the most important component of that cluttered slide and focus on that. You don't have to present everything. Yeah. And do not copy and paste and stretch. Or it really irks me when I see individuals do that. You know that when the image is stretched, when the photograph is stretched, it really does not reflect good on the presenter. So instead, if I had time to prepare, I can convert the information into a table or figure that somebody can actually understand. And the same information, I convert it to a table, and then I can walk you through with the title. Based on the title, I can walk you through these numbers and tell you what it means. Or you can go and and then end that slide with a short conclusion. Even if you didn't understand anything, you saw the title, effect of an umpire and p-umpire, and I shows that umpire does not auto-regulate. So even if you miss the in-between, you have the title to understand what am I talking about, and a conclusion to tell you what was the take-home message. And you can also convert the same numbers in that slide to a figure. But if you do show a figure or a graph, a chart, you must go through what is the y-axis, what is the x-axis, what does plus and minus mean, what is white and red mean. Then you can say, okay, this is the wild type, this is the mutant, this is a complementing strain. Then immediately a scientist or student will follow what these results supposed to reflect, right? And at the end of the day, it shows that even if you knock out UMC, which codes for the major beta-lactamase, the mutants still make beta-lactamase. In fact, this was one of the work of my student that led to discovery of a new beta-lactamase in Pseudomonas aeruginosa. So what we know from research is that the less words, you have more attention, right? In other words, even with just words and graphics, 35% of the audience are not listening or not paying attention. I only have 65% of the participants paying attention. If you only use words, you have 38% of the participants paying attention. So you basically lost over close to 62% of the participants. So remember this, these statistics are important. This is true even in your teaching. When you teach, if you have boring slides, you have lost 60% of your students. So Shouldn't you take time and make slides that make a difference? It's a question you have to answer. All right. So those are for effective slides. It's so important to make the slides right. And then let's talk about components of presentation. So now we know how to make the slides, and now we're going to figure out what goes into making a good presentation. So always there is opening slide, which you saw when you walked in. There's an opening slide that tells who I am, what's the topic, etc. And then always tell the audience, give them an outline. What am I going to cover? And you see that I keep going back to the outline so that the audience know where am I at any point of time during the presentation. And you provide introduction, which is with sufficient information. And again, hypothesis, aims, objectives, and experiments varies with topics and subject matter, but most science talks will have these three, and must conclude, and you must acknowledge. That's when people know you have reached the end of the talk. All right. So here's a sample title slide that I gave many moons ago, and it gives us all my information and the title. So I don't have to introduce myself. I usually put the slide up so people know who I am, right? And then slide 2, the outline we talked about already. So you make sure you have what you're going to talk about. Usually I go to this slide last after I prepared my talk, and I say, okay, these are all the different aspects of my presentation that I'm going to cover. So I do this outline slide at the end of preparing my presentation. And then the introduction. And the question is, what do I put on this introduction, right? So you ask the question, but don't ever write title as introduction, right? You want to write the title that reflects what you're talking about. Even after saying this, I'm sure I'll see slides with introduction from the students, right? Or even faculty. And then some of them will write continued. What are you continuing from? I just walked into the room. What are you continuing from? So don't do that. So again, you want to make sure that you're not continuing slide, right? So what should I cover during the introduction? It's a problem for every new student, and hopefully senior students know what they do, or the faculty know what they do. It's very easy. For me, giving a talk is following a simple recipe, right? The simple recipe is think about your title of your talk. So this is why it's important to choose a very comprehensive title. That could be a couple of sentences, 2-3 sentences long. I don't care. That's your first slide. And so here's an example, right? So the title is Pseudomonas aeruginosa, beta-lactam resistance, and cystic fibrosis. So what do I put in my introduction? I must introduce Pseudomonas aeruginosa because many people don't know what the organism is. I must introduce beta-lactam. What are beta-lactams? And I have to introduce what is beta-lactam resistance, right? How do the resistance develop? And then I introduce cystic fibrosis, and I have to bring together why is this important in cystic fibrosis patients, right? So minimally, based on the title here, I have 4 slides that discusses these 4 aspects of it. So it's very simple if you have a good title. So 4 slides to introduce this topic. And you can always tell the audience, by the time I finish my introduction, all these terms will become clear. And that's helpful. And then once you introduce, then if you are a research presentation, you want to identify a gap statement, right? What is the missing information? Why am I going? Because, you tell them, we know so much, yet here are all the open questions or the missing information. Based on that, we hypothesize. Again, writing a hypothesis statement is difficult for most people, including me. I have to rethink each time I put together a hypothesis. It's a testable statement between variables. I've given a link here. It will walk you through some of the nuances of writing hypothesis. I'm not promoting this website. It's a good site to start with to look at how to develop a hypothesis. And it's very important for any scientist. And then after you develop the hypothesis, you need to write the aims and objectives. And this is another gray area for most people. What's the difference between aims and objective, right? Aim is what is the overall intent? What do you hope to achieve? Right, like, and but objective is that how you achieve that particular aim, right? That is specific statements. No, I want to determine the overall statement could be, I want to know how Pseudomonas aeruginosa develops vancomycin resistance or tobramycin resistance, right? Because we use tobramycin to treat Pseudomonas infections. Then how am I going to figure that out? That's your objective. So, I'm going to measure the tobramycin resistance profile. That means I'm going to be able to measure how much each strain have become resistant to. That's what meaning by measurable outcomes, right? And how do you get there? So this is the objective. So remember, it's aim and objective. Goal is the overall overarching goal. What is the big picture? I want to help find a new antibiotics or inhibitor for this resistance, something much bigger picture. So I say GAO, GAO, goals, aim, and objective. That's the order of three things. Aims and objectives, when you present, you can either write in text 1, 2, 3, or you could use images. Like one of my students developed this aim. She gave all the introduction, and then she walked through the audience to what is the aim 1, aim 2, and aim 3. So you can certainly use images to give them a context of what are your specific aims. Yeah? So then now methodologies. Again, if you just put methodology, what method are you going to talk about? So don't do that, all right? Instead, put the title. And here's a simple one, right? DNA extraction. Then you can either use a figure or you can do a chart or what is this? This is a sketch of what's scheme of the process. So you can do a flow chart, or you can use figures, or you can combine, like in this case, I will combine both of them. So, and again, you don't have to go into how long you lysed, how long you grew the culture. The details are immaterial, right? So you want to just give them a brief overview of the protocol that was used, and name that protocol. Don't just put methods. And then again, once you do that, you do results. And don't do just results, right? That's again, what results are you presenting when I walk into that room? So instead, you want to give a title, descriptive but short, concise. And the content for results, try and use figures, tables. Don't write a lot of words, right? And always end with a simple conclusion. And here is a slide from one of my undergraduate. He's going to talk about AMPI transcript, and he walks you through the y-axis, fluorescence unit, and the x-axis is the fragment size. This is a wild type strain. You see a peak. In the mutant, the peak is gone. The first conclusion, there's only one transcript. In the mutant, the transcript is lost. So the presence of this transcript requires AMPR. So straightforward and simple. You have to learn how to reduce a lot of your data or a lot of the results into some meaningful, important results so that the audience can follow your research. So don't just say results, right? And the conclusion, a summary, again, same thing, concise, no long-winded sentences. Remember, it's a prompter to tell you, or prompter to give you an idea what not to forget. You can use model works, right? But like here's a model, but it's very complex models. So you animate for each section to come one at a time so people could follow it, right? And you can use bullet points, right? In this case, an example is there are two forms of AMPR. You see AMPR in the purple box, and then umpire star in a different style. And then there are two forms, right? So you can have the figure and also write small short sentences. So you want to make the conclusion again simple, right? And the conclusions can also be figure. And this was my student, and he decided to take his aims figure and simply put these 4 sentences, what was the final take-home message, and each one of these turned into a manuscript. That means he had about 6 to 8 experiments for each aim, and then that was the conclusion. Simple conclusion. And it really, really works. And I really appreciated the student's presentation of his conclusion. Acknowledgements. And you must acknowledge where the intellectual input for your presentation, your science, you didn't get here on your own. You worked with the mentor who sort of drove you in that direction. There's also technical support. You don't get to do the experiment. You didn't just learn, you're born knowing how to do particular technique. There were people in the lab who helped you. And then there's also this financial contribution by agencies, your TA-ship or teaching assistantship, fellowships, etc. So don't forget your mentors. I've seen students who forget to acknowledge the mentors. There could be more than one. Your collaborators, and I would say, did I lose you guys? No. Norman?
Yeah, we lost you for a second. You're back now with us. Thanks, Kalai.
Okay, thank you. So you want to make sure at the beginning of a career, have a page where you start writing who taught you what experiment. So you make the list of collaborators, and they could be your lab mates, your neighbor's lab, because very often when you're writing the paper 3-4 years down the road, you forgot who helped you. And then all of a sudden, a senior student, a senior postdoc comes to me, Dr. Mathee, I should be on that manuscript. Because I would have forgotten. If that person wasn't very good at asking me, we would have ignored it. And that person can hold grudges. And you don't want that. You want to keep everybody happy so that your career also continues in a good, makes a good progress. So don't piss off your colleagues, right? So that's very important. And then certainly you didn't make it to where I am without having a family support. Not everybody has the family support. Most of us do. And then you have to recognize that your journey had a lot of helping hands, and remember them. And it's really makes the people who are listening to you much happier that you have not forgotten your roots. Okay. All right. So now those are all the components of presentation. And let's talk about you, the presenter. Okay, I hope I'm not going to lose you guys. So the you is what kind of non-verbal communications you are providing. Am I flickering, Norman? Hello?
Hi. I think you're okay now. Yeah.
Okay. Something is happening. Okay, I hope we can. Joe, can you pause the presentation a bit? I don't want to lose the middle of the presentation. So we do give a lot of nonverbal communication. What we don't say when you walk into a room and when you're given asked to give a talk, there are a lot of things that the audience are looking at you. Until you open your mouth, they don't know what kind of talk you're going to give. But 65% of your communication is nonverbal, right? How you appear, your body language, the posture, your facial expressions, whether you are happy or not happy, I really don't want to be here. And the gestures, how you stand, whether you put your hands on your waist and or like, I don't care, I don't want to communicate. And then the eye contact, are you making the eye contact? And it's also important that you modulate your tones, yeah? So present yourself well, right? You never get a second chance to make a first impression. It's so true. You wear comfortable shoes and clothes. Make sure you don't trip over your shoes, especially women. You don't need stilettos. Dress comfortable so you can walk around during presentation. You don't hide it behind the podium. Don't dress professionally and don't distract. And often I have to remind students, less is more is. I, you really want to make sure you come across that you're serious, right? That doesn't mean that you wear black and blue just like all men do. Women can wear colors, and I would always recommend that. Behave professionally. Don't play with your pockets, with your pocket contents. Don't fidget or fiddle. Make sure you relax, and really try and relax for your presentation. And you want to respect your audience, and you want to be very courteous and mindful, so don't come across combative. And you must speak clearly and use what is a KISS principle. If you don't know what it is, it means keep it simple, stupid. That is the KISS principle. Face the audience. Don't speak to the board, and many people do that. Don't read from the slides or notes. Don't mumble. Learn how to pronounce. There is no reason why you cannot learn how to pronounce. Don't use abbreviations and slangs, because those may not, abbreviations, you may be only very specific to specific scientific community. Slangs are specific country and communities. It doesn't work. Don't use filler words. Yeah, okay, right. And by the time of 5 minutes is up, you have said 10 rights. And if you have issues with this kind of issues, I highly recommend, if you have a Toastmaster club in your town or in your school or in your institution, join the Toastmaster club, and that would really help you to get over some of these simple learn some of the simple tools and techniques, but they will tell you every time you make a mistake, and that's quite something. Slow down and breathe so that they can be more effective. Plan your talk, write up your talk. You got to use a word economy, and I'm losing some of my images on my slides. My PowerPoint is struggling. So you must make it simple, short and simple. Proofread your talk and slide, and read out loud, right? See if the talk flows. See if the talk makes sense. If it doesn't, go and reorganize the order of the slides. It's PowerPoint. You have until an hour before your presentation, unless you have to give it earlier, right? So reorganize and slides, right? And proofreading is so important. Not just you proofread. Ask your faculty member, your friend, your colleague to proofread your presentations, and also write up so that you also do not make grammar errors. So let me talk about time management. It is so important that you plan. Plan the number of slides, what you want to present. The number of slides is dictated by how long is your talk. If it's a 10-minute talk, no more than 6 or 7 slides. So you got to, and sometimes when you have many slides, you also want to make sure that you can finish it within the time frame. Give enough time for question and answers. And this really will, practicing to get the right content within the right time will allow you to give a more effective talk. Reorganize if there's need to. And I cannot stress enough on practicing. Practice. Practice makes for a better presentation. You practice with or without audience. be receptive to their critic. They're there to help you, not to criticize you. So you want to listen to what they have to say, go and fix it. You have to practice out loud. That's only then you will realize that what are the mistakes you're making, and that whether they are making any sense, and if there is any continuity. Do not memorize the talk, because if you do memorize it, what happens when somebody asks you a question and you forgot where you left? So you sort of repeat the last sentence and then you start over. And it often happens in young students, and you know that this person has memorized the talk. They don't really know the talk. And make sure you keep a timer on. Make sure you finish 5 or 10 minutes within a given time, especially if it's a long talk. And you could set your own alarm. I always set my alarm to make sure I finish within the time. And don't abuse lasers. And as I told you, lasers can be effective if you know how to use them. But if you make your slides right, you don't even need a laser. Let's talk about something on a question and answer etiquettes, right? So the first thing you do is thank the person. Hey, thank you for the wonderful questions, and even sometimes not a great question. But you as a presenter got to take responsibility for really understanding what the question is. Don't jump to answer until you really know what the question is. So you repeat the question so you really understand the questions. Paraphrase if you have to. If the question is too long, and then I said, maybe you're asking me this, and the person who asked the question say, yeah, that's what I want to know. And you also by doing these, you are taking you're buying time to find the right answers to the questions as well. So there are 3 ways to answer a question. You answer, refer, or defer. You answer if you know the answer. So for example, if you don't know the answer and your mentor is there or colleague is there who probably know the answer, and say, hey, I don't know the answer, but maybe Dr. Fry could give you an answer, or your mentor could give an answer. But let's say you don't know the answer, you can't fall back on anybody. What you do is differ. I don't know the answer to this question. Perhaps if you really need to know the answer, I may know where to find the answer. I'll come back to you. And sometimes people keep asking the same questions over and over again, and it's clearly either they are there to cause you trouble or really they really want to know. And you say, hey, let's have coffee. We can talk over it, and maybe we can find the answers together. And more than likely, this person may not even be there when you look for them after the presentation. And so you really learn how to answer, refer, defer, right? And it's also important to know, I do not know. A lot of Asian cultures and some countries, they think it's not right to say, I do not know. I may look stupid. It's okay. You get more respect by saying, I do not know. I respect people who says, I do not know, because there's only so much one can learn on this earth, right? And remember, defer or discuss later if you can't answer the questions. So I want to go over some odds and ends that I've collected over time by providing these presentations. One is transition. You got to make sure there is a transition between topics. How do you go? Is the slide 1 connects to slide 2? Slide 2 connects to slide 3. So you want to make sure they are connected. You can use animations in your presentations, but be mindful. Sometimes they can be very annoying if it's overused. Some people like to use sound, and sometimes it's okay. Occasional use of sounds are very good, but it's not always good. Don't bounce between the slides. Those days it cost money to make slides. These days a PowerPoint, duplicate the slide and use it again. Don't go back and forth. Make sure all your slides are numbered, and you're giving a talk and your slides are not numbered. And I have a question on slide 10. You are slide 50. I say, the slide that describes X, Y, and Z? It's so important to put the slide numbers. And you see my slide number is extremely prominent. You know exactly what slide number I'm on. And you have to acknowledge the source of images. It's a must. It's a copyright infringement if you don't tell them where the image comes from. And you can also create backup slides for certain questions you anticipate, but don't make it a talk. Okay. Backup slides are useful only if there is very critical information for you to impart, but I'll have it, but don't make it another presentation. And they also want to talk about you as a presenter attending the whole session, because very often the presenters know, oh, my talk is after break, so I'm going to go just in time during the break. That is really disrespectful, not only to the audience, to the other presenters. And why is it important to attend the session? Because you learn from others' mistakes, what you should not be doing, right? But it also allows you to get a sense for the audience, what kind of questions they're asking, how interested they are. If you are competing, you get a sense for the judges, what they're looking for, and also a sense for the moderators. And the most important thing for you to attend the whole session is to prevent repetition. If a speaker before you I gave an introduction ad nauseum of the topic you're going to talk about, and you have 4 slides on that introduction. Why waste time? You say, since the previous presenter just gave you an entire overview of what this whole thing about, I'm going to jump through these first few slides and go straight to my data. You know, some people will say, the previous speaker just gave you ad nauseum on this topic, and then they proceed to present the same stuff all over again. I'm like, why am I listening to you again? You already told us. We just heard it. You know, it's like, are we stupid? And it's like, come on. If somebody has given it, don't do it, right? Unless you have many members of the audience who just walked into the room and who missed the previous talks. And again, it is your loss, really, right? That means you're giving more respect to the audience who stayed rather than the audience who just walked in late, right? But it also shows maturity in terms of how you listening to the talk and how you integrating what you hear within the talk. And let's talk about audience. As audience, there is an audience etiquette. You should arrive early, just like the speaker, or on time. Make sure you turn off electric gadgets. And this is a photograph I took at the seminar. And you see that everyone is busy looking at some electronics. It is so rude, and it is so rude it's disrespect to the speaker. Pay attention, and the other thing is, don't make noises. People will buy potato chips, and I never serve potato chips. I'll serve oranges for seminars because you peel, there's no noise, and it's a beautiful smell of orange all over the room. So choose your food wisely when you go to seminars. And if you do fall asleep, don't snore. And if you're snoring, I hope the neighbor will just nudge you to wake you up, right? And stay to the end of the presentation. If you can't stay, or you can inform the speaker in advance, like, I got to go, I have to teach, I have another meeting. So at sharp 5 to 5, I'm leaving the room. So at least they know why you are leaving the room. And make sure you show appreciation. That it means that you clap at the end of the presentation. And you only know if it's end of the presentation if you actually paid attention to the presentation. And if you paid attention to presentation, then you can also formulate a question. And asking a question is very important. I often ask my colleague, and I say, why people don't ask questions? There's so many things to answer, to ask for. And they say, well, they don't care. So they are just warm bodies, and they don't get to know. And they don't, and for me, I rather give a talk to 5 people who care about my topic than 50 people who don't care about my topic. So pay attention, ask a question. And that also, you as a student, you'll also stand out and say, that student was paying attention. He or she asked a question, right? So in summary of my presentation, there are 3 V's, 3 K's, 5 C's, and 5 P's. So let's go over what are those. The 3 C's are the vocal, visual, and verbal. And you see, visual is 55% of your presentation. The slides, how you present yourself, all that includes under visual. Vocal is how you modulate your tones. You either put them to sleep, or whether you go up and down, you sound excited no matter how many times you present this talk. And I present this talk like 100 times now, but I still remain enthusiastic. So stay enthusiastic. So that shows in your vocal modulation. Verbal, what you actually say is very low, right? But even what you actually say has to be concise, has to be prepared, use the KISS principle, keep it simple, stupid, right? And what about the 3 Ks? Know your talk. This is over preparing. It's fine. Really know what each slides are. Know your objective, what you want to tell the audience, and make sure you also know your audience. Whom are you talking to? At what stage in their career you are talking to? How about the 5 Cs and 5 Ps? So the 5 Cs are clarity, being concise, connecting to the audience, connecting the slide, compelling. So your story is really, they should be listening to it. Why should they listen to it? And make sure the story is continual. This is a proper transition. So there are major 5 Cs, right? Clear, concise, connect, compelling, and continual. What are the 5 Ps? The 5 Ps are pace. Don't run, right? Pace your talk. Pause when necessary, because you want, if it's a very important topic, you want to pause and let the audience take it in. And often repeating your specific, the outline slide allows you to pause and give a brief moment to breathe, right? And modulate your pitch so that they are with you. Learn how to pronounce the words. Make sure, these days, you can go Google pronunciation or dictionary pronunciation. This is a British American pronunciation. You can plan and practice your pronunciation. And then project as a person, you stand up, project, don't do this. And, I don't want to give this talk. And I really don't want to be here. No, you want to, no matter how good is your presentation, if you don't project yourself, there's no go, right? You that also the audience will gain confidence in the speaker. So at the end of my talk, I would like to acknowledge we have past or emeritus co-editor-in-chief, Dr. Norman Fry, who is my host and partner in crime. We were both editor-in-chief for the 5 years, and we officially handed it over today. And this was a picture taken when we just started. We certainly aged since then. And I want to really recognize Microbiology Society conference and event managers, Joe Fitzgerald and Becky Hurst. And Joe was with me from the beginning of this seminar series. And we really thank both of you for the wonderful support they have given to the seminar series. I'd like to thank the audience, all of you, for being here. I really, truly appreciate it. And so practice does not make perfect. Only perfect practice makes perfect. And use the opening to ignite imaginations, then close with convictions. 2 of my favorite sayings about presentations. And with that, I like to thank you. My work here is done, and this is appreciation. Thank you all for being here.
Okay, so there are a number of questions in already. And the first one from Philip Hanai is, how do I maintain calmness when starting my presentation? Now, you alluded to kind of breathing, but perhaps you could just expand on that.
Yes, I think one of the slides that got lost is having nerves, right? Even no matter how much, how many talks you have given, the first few minutes are very nervous start. Right? So I would say come early and make sure you, just like an opera singer, you exercise your vocal cords, and a lot of them will go and do all the certain sounds to improve their vocal cords. Make sure you have practice so that you know your content. You don't memorize and try and read out. And also what is important is that you come in and, like today we met half an hour early. We went through all the slides. Everything was fine. And then suddenly, boom, something goes wrong. So you cannot get flustered. It's part of life. You keep going. But one of the thing recently, someone asked me, and we actually did this during the lecture, was that how do I really calm down? I tell you, the best way to calm down is called the humming bee breath, right? Or it's called the Brahmari yoga or Brahmari pranayama. And look up online, and they have many of them show you how to do it. It's basically you close your ears and close your eyes and you breathe in and out loud. And if you do it 3 times, it completely brings all your senses to complete one place. And it's not only to control your nerves during or before your lecture. Trust me, if you have children, you want to teach your children to do that. Because I work with my nieces on whenever they are very frustrated. So we sit and do that, and it calms them down. And I will highly recommend each one of you doing it.
That's great. I think another thing is to sometimes to try and avoid speaking too fast. So to maybe just kind of take a little bit more time, because the voice in your head is probably going 100 miles an hour. The same person's. So what do you think about humor in talks? So here's the question: as a scientist, is it always good to start off with something funny? Dangerous one.
I think humor is great if you can pull it off. I don't think everyone has the ability to tell a joke and get the audience. We are not born comedians, but you really have to work it. If you can do it, hats off to you. I would be very careful, because if it falls flat and then you start your lecture falling flat on the joke, that's not nice. So it's a choice.
Okay, here's another one. So thank you for the expository talk. I would like the speaker to differentiate an academic seminar, e.g. pre-filled or post-filled seminar for PhD candidates, from a general seminar. For instance, you're invited for a talk. I need this clarification because academic seminars require you to state the introduction methods, etc. But from what I deduced from the ongoing seminar, no need of writing them on the slide. So I guess that's, I guess she's answered her own question. I don't know, or he.
Well, when you do your department seminar, if you do a lab meeting or a short talk, and you're working on one topic, the amount of details required for different sessions are different. If you give an invited talk, you really want to focus on the big picture. Right? If you're invited, then you're talking to audience that probably know all the methods, and simply say, I use next-gen sequencing to sequence. I'm not going to go explain what next-gen sequencing is, but I will certainly explain concepts and then provide the big picture. And so really knowing what the audience are, who the audience are, what they want. And you fashion your talk differently, and you have to think through the whole process. And I always say that when you are asked to give an invited talk, often you're asked to give an abstract, you sort of think about your abstract, what you're giving, so you fashion your talk around that abstract you're putting together. May not be the most acceptable answer for you. We can chat over it. You know how to get hold of me.
Okay, there's a couple about fielding questions. So tips about answering questions, including ones which may not be in your subject area. And on a similar theme, how would you suggest handling questions which you don't have an answer to, or can't answer fully, or need more research? So
okay, so one of the slides that got lost during this presentation is a question and answer etiquettes, right? First of all, when you are thanks for the question, by the way, because it allows me to remember that slide. So first of all, you sort of repeat the question because you want to take responsibility for the question that being asked. But you really, I always say that I repeat the question for one thing to tell the rest of the audience what the question was, but I'm buying time to make the answer. to think of an answer, right? So there are three ways to do the answers. One, you know the answer, you answer them, right? Or you don't know the answer, but you know somebody in the audience, like your mentor, who probably know the answer. So you refer to that person, right? Maybe Dr. Fry can answer that question, right? And then Dr. Fry may have an answer, may not have an answer. Or you differ. He says, that's a great question, but I don't know the answer. I'll be happy to come back to you with an answer if you reach out to me. When you defer and you also saying, I don't know, you gain respect. It's okay to say, I don't know, right? Many Asian cultures, maybe other countries, they don't like to admit they don't know things. Remember, we don't know everything. It's okay to say, I don't know. You'll gain more respect by saying, I don't know, right? So you answer, refer, or defer. But always say, thank you for the great question, even if you think it wasn't so great, right? But make sure you figure out how to answer. You can always, and you can also, as a person who's asking a question, you can say, oh, what a great talk, but don't lie. I know it was a lousy talk. Why are you giving me a great talk, right? And, you can couch it. And it's a very interesting topic. I have a question. So it's nice to also give some positive feedback. All right.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, I would definitely use the chair. So I think even for informal presentations, it's really great if you can get somebody to introduce you, and then just as we are here, you've got somebody fielding the questions, and I mean, it's more applicable in an in-person situation, but I think it can be very helpful if you've got somebody you can defer to, and you can just say, yeah, we'll take that after the meeting or in the coffee break or something. So no, that people shouldn't be using questions to show how much they know, and the dreaded, it's more of a comment than a question scenario. We've all heard those.
I can add a little bit to that, Norman.
Okay.
But there are people sometimes, they ask you the same question over and over again. They are there just to annoy you or to annoy your mentor for some reason or the other. You should tell them, it looks like you're really interested in this topic. Can we have coffee? You think this person is going to wait for you? He or she is gone, right? Unless they're really interested. So let's talk about it later. We don't have to waste everybody's time, but don't use question and answer times to give another lecture, please.
No, that's right. Okay, here's one from an anonymous attendee. Thank you for your talk. It's really helpful. What would be your advice to an early career scientist that is going to do their first in-person presentation to an audience?
Prepare. Practice.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you should definitely practice and get feedback from your peers. I think it's really helpful in a friendly environment because we've all been there, and your presentation will improve, and you may get a sense also of what type of questions you may get asked. So.
Right. It's practice with audience, without audience, with friends, without friends.
How to give presentations on research papers. Give some tricks.
It's just, I gave you all the tricks today. The only thing I'll add to that, don't list all the methods and then all the results and things. So give a method, provide the results, and give the take-home message. The next method, results, take-home message, right? So don't do everything one. It's, for me, is only an undergraduates who don't know how to prepare slides will do that. They give 10 slides of method and then 10 slides of results. I've already forgotten all the methods are. Then I don't know where you are, right? So that's a sure way of losing your audience.
Okay, here's one about a kind of figures table. So what should you do if you got a long table that can't be put on fit on a slide with a reasonable font size, and rather than having it continuous? I think I know the answer to that one.
Go for it.
Well, I would say, what is the essential information you're trying to convey? Because you will lose your audience where we've all sat in presentations where we've just had apologies from the presenter to say, oh, sorry, you can't read this. So it's not helpful. So I would distill down the important messages and concentrate on what are you trying to convey, rather than trying to get people to not read a million values or whatever it is. So that's what I'd say.
Yeah, and you can't read those values anyways, they're so tiny. Or make a figure, create a nice figure which is easy to see the trend or whatever. Not never show a string of tables. It's wasting everyone's time. Yeah.
Okay, can I use my chair privilege? So I'm going to ask you,
Sure.
so during the lovely COVID times, what have you found different about teaching your own students remotely as opposed to in person?
Well, the human interaction factor is missing completely. So often, the faces you see are different in person. So that is one thing. And then on the other hand, I got to know their names much better on a remote session because I have all their faces and names. So, and then I could call on them to ask questions. And the one thing I have learned is how to keep the students engaged in a remote session is to literally call their names to ask a question. And I will scroll through the participants list and I keep calling people, and they've learned that since I call randomly, so they have to pay attention. But the one major thing that I realize is with the remote session is that some of these, the quality of the slides, the font size and all that stuff, sometimes not a huge issue because everybody looking at this small screen, you can read it. And but that doesn't mean that you make lousy slides, but you should pay that. Other than that, no, I mean, it's and we also we continue to do hybrid these days because after every lecture, I ask the students to answer 2 questions. What is beginning of the lecture? What do you learn? What do you expect to learn? Like I asked you guys. And then in the end, I said what was good about the lecture and what was challenging. And so at the end of the lecture, we look at what was challenging during that last 1 hour of lecture. And then we can go back and see where we can fix or help those students. And that's, of course, it's not anonymous, so they have students. So I tell them, be honest, that's the only way we can improve. So in person is a little bit more funny, you can walk around, joke and do things, and which you can't do it in remote session.
Okay, great.
Hey, there's a question here on the chat. So they're asking, what if I come late? This is from Olikayode Ojo. Would it be so? No, when you come in late, it's better be late than never, so it's okay. Try not to be late. You always want to be on time, but if for some reason you are running late in a meeting, what you do is quietly go and sit at the back. You don't want to apologize and interrupt the ongoing presentation. And please don't bang the door. Open the door softly and close it softly. A lot of people will just go boom. They're already late and then they want everybody in the room to know they're late, right? So quietly slip behind, and then at the end of the session, go and apologize to the speaker and say, hey, I'm so sorry. There was a reason why I'm late, unless there's no reason, right?
I think this is actually meaning that as a speaker, you're late.
Oh, speakers, you're late? I hope they're not waiting for you and they moved on. As a speaker, you have to be the half an hour early or an hour early, not late.
Yeah, but if you are, I think I would apologize and just carry on. That's and say so. Okay, there's one. Okay, here's an interesting one. So really good seminar. Hopefully the society can put a similar one on posters. Any words which can be said
Yes.
now about transferring tips from today about posters? That's a great comment. Thank you, Kelvin. We'll definitely take that on board. But yeah, I think there are some perhaps some different messages we would have for posters, but similar. Yeah, do you want to comment on that one, Kalai?
Yeah. So I do a session for my students here how to do a good poster. What I'm thinking is we can combine a good poster and an elevator pitch. How to give the elevator pitch of your work, who you are. And I'm thinking about that talk for the beginning for next year.
Yeah.
That's why January, I didn't want to do any other talk. I want to do a professional talk on how to present a poster and how to give a elevator pitch. A poster is the same thing, right? In 3 minutes, in 250 words, you have to convince the audience that whoever is at your poster that the work you're doing is important. And also at the same time having a poster that it's you use a lot of the things you learned here, color, contrast, font size, etc. Then how much information goes into the poster is important. We can talk about it. We'll do
Yeah.
another session. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll definitely take that on board. And I would say for now, I would say the big one is visual. So I think particularly for posters, yeah, you want a hook to pull people along so they'll ask you about it and chat to you. So I would say have some great images and pictures because and don't go text heavy. So I personally, I'm a big fan of minimal bullet points, less text, more pictures, because you can always talk about it once you've engaged them.
Mm.
Okay, so again, this one from the chat. If you were asked about the most important attributes a good presenter should have, what would you say that is? You probably have a top few, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, good attributes in what? I don't know, your slide. Remember, there are a few things, right? It's the slides, you, and then it's you, the person, and how professional you come across, how well prepared you come across, how well you can modulate your voice, you talk. Don't put the audience to sleep. Practice your pitch and all that stuff. That's all makes the difference. So, and and smile and interact with your audience. You want the audience to come and talk to you after the presentation. And it's I think you have to develop a personality around your if you want to be a good effective presenter, you need to also develop a certain personality to go with that. I hope some of you want to talk to me after my presentation.
We're seeing it in action. So you're it's we learn more when things don't go well, I think.
Oh,
So
yes.
it's good to see you coping in adverse circumstances, Kalai. Here's one.
And
So hello, thank you for the great presentation. Please, is there anything like over preparing for a presentation? And if so, how does it affect the presenter? Would you say you can over prepare?
never, you can never over prepare. You can never guess what the questions are. But by over preparing, when people feel questions, you're ready for any questions, right? So, but practicing to make sure keeping to time, limiting the words you use is so important. Sometimes you want to say so much about a topic. No, cut it down, cut it down. So keeping to time will allow you to keep the points on time, and then use the over preparedness for your presentation, your answering questions, right? And yeah.
Yeah, I mean I totally agree, because I think the more familiar you are with what you want to say, then the less you rely. I think when we start out, I vividly remember the first presentation I ever gave as a very nervous junior, and I literally read it from a script. So I think as you you know, as you kind of get used to talking, the more familiar you are, the less you rely on. I think it's still good to have prompts if you get lost. And essentially, I think from today, you would say, you as a presenter are using the slides as prompts to speak
Yeah,
because you have all that knowledge you're ready to impart, but that only comes through through practice. There's another
exactly.
one here. Any suggestions for alternatives to PowerPoints for oral presentations? If the slide
There
prompt,
are, there
yeah,
are, there are OneNote and the Google presentation, all of which I don't like because they don't allow me, give me control. So my students do prepare on Google Note and the Google presentation and OneNote. And then when they send it to me, the arrows are messed up, and I say, forget it, move it to PowerPoint where I have a better control. So until they figure that out, I think PowerPoint is still your best system to use. Yeah.
okay. All right. Well, I mean, it's great to see so many people and lots of discussion, which is always lovely. So,
Yeah, I wanted to add a comment, and this was an invited talk in India. First, the whole they could not put my slides up, and I was there early, and they were still, and it was like 5 minutes into it, and I said, okay, I'm going to go, right? When he said, oh, prepared, you know what, your first 5 slides for sure. I said, I'm going to just start without slides, and I'm going to start talking, which I did like today. But at the same time, I also fell backwards because there was a big hole at the back of my stage. And I'm like, okay, I got up and I keep going. No, so when you come over prepared and you just have to get up and keep going. You shouldn't let all these things bother you. It was just such a comedy of errors that evening.
okay,
Yeah.
here's a late one coming in. So, what happens when you are given 10 minutes for a presentation, and you find that at the 10th minute you are halfway through your presentation? Should you summarize or calm down and continue?
No, you quickly run to your final slide. I say, I'm sorry, I don't have time to continue. I would love to talk to you, anybody who's interested. Here is my conclusion. Do not continue once your time is
Yeah,
up,
because
because
I think,
nobody's
yeah.
going to listen to you.
No, and I think it's and we've all been in sessions where they've overrun. So again, maybe we should uh, expand on a few duties of a chair in this situation. So, and this is why we'd all, you should be practicing and timing your presentation. So so it's yeah, so yeah, skip to the end and close, and you've used your allotted time. Okay, well, I think I'm going to close us there. So so thank you all for attending, for all the questions. You know where we are if you want to keep asking us questions. So I'd like to thank Kalai and yourselves for attending. A reminder that the link, we'll see if we can fix the slides, and that will be emailed to you. And the next session in the JMM seminar series is Friday, 30th of September, 1400 hours BST, where Professor Kim Hardy of the University of Nottingham will be talking on interrogating biofilms to improve antimicrobial options to combat rising resistance. So thanks again. Thank you, Kalai and Joe, and see you next time.
Thank you, Norman. I
All
appreciate
right.
it. Thank you, the audience. Yeah.